container tonight, but you can. So let's do that. We're gonna do two. Welcome to tonight's stream. Tonight we'll be going over Daily Bugle on TryHackMe. This machine involves a CMS, a content management system that had a SQL injection. It's a good box to practice cracking hashes on, and then trying to use GTFO bins or um, binaries basically on Linux to escalate your privileges and gain root access. So I got the box started up. This one is rated harder difficulty. It is a little bit more involved. Again, we're getting to the harder parts of the OSCP path, so a little less, guidance. This box does have write-ups, so you can follow those write-ups if you needed help. Great thing about TryHackMe is that there's the ability to kind of do that and use some of that information. I'm going to introduce two tools that are not covered in anything that we've talked about before, that can kind of help identify what this box was, and then the other tool is going to help like with scanning and stuff like that, kind of like a nice little wrapper to things, to kind of identify services and stuff like that. So we got the box spun up. I'm gonna copy the IP address and then uh, copy the IP address there. I did start this box. It is a free room. It was one of the first rooms that I did start when I joined TryHackMe, so there are some answers filled out, unfortunately. But you can follow along. This is a free room. So the first tool I want to introduce tonight and talk about is Recognitory. This looked like a really cool tool. It has a Docker container. It's written in Python, and what this tool does is it will help with some of the scanning process and identify the ports and then perform like additional scans based on that. So we can kind of see here that we see that it's identifying HTTP and SMB and RDP, and then it will do some additional services against that, and then you can also do recommendations, even spit out tools to do things, things like that. So I thought it'd be a kind of cool tool to use. I've went ahead and already installed it into my Kali instance. You basically just need to do a git clone and then an install, or you can run the Docker container. And I always love when they have a Docker container. I will not be using the Docker container tonight, but you can. Um, so let's do that. We're gonna do two scans. Then we're gonna set off the Nmap, and we'll set off the Recogniter, and that way you can kind of see both results. So I'll make this window bigger. I'm gonna split my window here. Again, with most things, we'll put the IP address in the targets file. Uh, some of the box tonight, we will have to. I'll show you the command, but I'll have to skip the wait for it because it will take a while. Especially the SQL injection and the password cracking, and I'll get into why it takes that while. So we're gonna do an Nmap. Again, we usually do the initial scan, so we're just gonna do the -il targets, and then -oa init scan, and then we're gonna name this Nmap. We'll do T5. Okay, and then we're gonna run that new tool there. So we can already see that the Nmap finished. Hey, thanks for the sub or the follow. So this one here, it needs a -t for targets, and so we'll put that target IP address. We'll go ahead and put a word list too. let's see here, user share word list, and then rockU. And then we can also specify some other things like dash dash services. We can do dash dash SNMP, dash dash virtual host. And we're going to do a dash O, and that's going to be the output there. You can see that there, output. And we'll just put that in that directory. So we'll let this kick off. It helps if I spell. Did I mess up? Dash dash services dash dash SMB. And so we can kind of see some of this, going more into detail about stuff, which is kind of cool. All right, so we got 3 ports. We could also kick off the advanced scan. Version, vuln. We'll name this detailed. And we want to do a dash A and dash O. Capital A dash capital O. Advanced and OS detection. Or all checks and OS detection. All right, that looks good. Kick that off. And then we're going to go look at that web port. Hey, leaky. I'll look at your link later there after the stream. So it looks like a Daily Bugle page has a home page. There's a written by a category. We see a login form. So that actually works. So this looks like a legitimate type of application. We do see that it is PHP. So again, looking at those file extensions can kind of give you an idea of things to come later. We do see that some parameters are on the get line, such as the view and the item ID. Anytime I see any numbers like this is definitely where I would try, like a SQL injection type thing, see if something comes up, that type of stuff. Playing with that a little bit more in detail. So let's look at the source and see if we can find out if there's any information about this, something that gives us a little bit more. Again, right now, custom, there's no banners or anything that say anything. This just says Daily Bugle. So this is kind of leading us in that path. So looking at the source, we kind of see some meta tags. This usually happens whenever the web application is trying to be found and stuff like that, and they'll put descriptions and things in there. And one of the things that kind of stands out is Joomla. So we understand then that this is using Joomla under its face here. We can kind of see this in multiple different areas here. So that's a good clue. All right, so that's good. That's a good piece of information there that we wanted. We can already see that the reconers found some SSH service, HTTP, HTTPS, and MySQL, and now it's doing a more detailed scan. Provide a little bit more information on those. That's great. All right, so there are 2 tools that you can use. One that's native to Kali, which is Joomla Scan. And if you don't have that one, it does not come in default, so you need to install it, but you can use Joomla Scan. And there's the options there. We're going to split this one. And then one of the tools I like to use, it's a little outdated though, is called Cms Map. So this one's about 2 years outdated, but this was a really great tool that help identify content management systems and what it would focus on was WordPress, Joomla, Drupal, and Moodle. So this was kind of like that Swiss Army knife of CMS tools that helps out a lot. Um, so this is again just a git clone and then run the script type situation. So we're gonna run this one too, and I'm gonna show you the differences between those two tonight. So let's get this kicked off. So with any CMS, you always should do some kind of CMS scan because there's just so many different plugins, versions, um, additional like things that can be added on to a CMS that trying to enumerate things is harder. It's not impossible. I mean, this is what these things are doing, right? They're querying certain pages that would be there based on like installation of stuff, like for um, like editing the blogs and such. So, it's asking for that directory's page and then, richtext.php or whatever. And if that's there, then it says, okay, well that plugin must be installed and we can use that plugin. It's been known to have cross-site scripting or SQL injection or things like that. All right, so let's get this kicked off. So we're going to do Joomla Scan. This takes a -u, and then we just need to provide it the URL, so we'll get that. Another good indicator too that this is Joomla is the icon. So you can kind of see that there, but you would have to know what that icon is. So that's Joomla Scan there. Kick that off, and then we're gonna do the CMS map. So this is gonna be, I put this in, I think in this directory. Yep. All right. So CMS map. Yep. All right. So I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger so you guys can see this one. All right, so CMS map here will take the target or the URL. You can force it just to do a specific scan. So in this case, if you didn't know the CMS, you could have it scan all of them. Do a -big F for full scan, thread it, specify some user agents. Again, that might be for if you need to get past a WAF or anything. You could take a input file, so like if you have multiple websites to check out, things like that. Yeah, you could do that. And then it can brute force, do some Kraken word list type stuff. That's if it found anything. So we're just going to run the default scan just to kind of give you an idea here. And so I just need to give it a URL, it looks like. We're just going to do the same thing. All right, so that's running. Let's look at what Joomla Scan came up with. All right, so this is OWASP Joomla Scan. Again, it detected the version, so that's a good piece of information that we would need to know. Um, this here says target Joomla core is not vulnerable. Then it found some directory listings like administrator components, modules, templates, images, banners. And this is what we're kind of talking about, those add-ons. We'll create these directories or create these files um, and things like that. So that kind of gives you an idea. And then, found an admin page. So, we might want to look at that later. We see that there's some things in the robots.txt. Didn't find any backup files, didn't find any log files, and didn't find a config php.x. So, uh, during the installation, sometimes on web servers, what they'll do is they'll leave over remnant files or files from installation. And sometimes these files can have configuration information, and then they're just like renamed after the installation's done. So they're never removed off the server, and this is kind of what it's checking for. All right, so that gave us some information. Let's look at CMS Map and why I kind of like this one better. So in CMS Map, we can kind of see more information. Like we see that this is Apache. We see that the version of PHP. We can see some of the headers enforced here, not enforced. We did get a robots text file. We did get Joomla 3.7.0. And then also the big thing about this is we get these EDB IDs. And so if you remember from our other videos, EDB IDs relate to search exploit. So this is kind of telling us what to search for in search exploit as possible exploits for this. We also did see like the website template. So there's Proton Star there. We also see an administrator template, ISIS. So those would be another things that we could look for to see if there was any recent um, vulnerabilities in those packages. Again, this is outdated by 2 years, so it would make sense to search for that type of stuff. And then the rest of it's kind of just searching for default files. This usually takes a little bit longer. We can kind of see that the percentage is going, but that's kind of where we're at with that and the difference between the two scanners. So let's see here. Which one of these would be probably the best? So we know based on two scans that we have 3.7.0. So this kind of leads us to be using this more than the other exploits possibility here. We got about 4% more on this to see what comes up. All right, there we go. So these are some of those leftover files that we were talking about. Again, things like this. That's pretty interesting. A SQL DB that might have something inside of it. Uh, we also see that there's tiny MCE editor being used. Hey, thanks for the follow, Van Halla. We got components in here, Ajax banners, config, contact. So these are all different packages installed in here that I would definitely look up exploits. Again, CMS Map kind of rates these. Again, this is 2-year-old data, so take it as is. But if I'm looking for something to possibly exploit or look for that foothold, then yeah, I would go look at this stuff and see if there's something out there for each one of these. Um, but we're gonna use that SQL injection. There's a lot of SQL files on here, which is crazy. Let's see if one of these work. Ooh, yes. So we can see that there's some of these SQL commands here basically that are still left on or accessible on the server. Uh, so that might be something to go through, especially if it's some kind of SQL command that might set up the database initially, like install an admin or things like that. Um, those are definitely high value targets there. This is usually called remnant files left over or directory permissions. So if the directory permissions were set up correctly, then you shouldn't be able to view these. But because there's so many of them, this almost looks like they're remnant files left over from installations of stuff, especially this com admin, and you can kind of see the SQL updates and stuff like that. So in the pen test report, I would flag this as remnant files and directory permissions. I would have two findings on this. So you see a lot of Postgres updates here, and a lot of 2017 and stuff like that. Then you got the com banners. You got some more installs. Something like this where it says install. That might have a user that gets added or things like that. We'll look at one more of these files just to kind of show. Yeah, so like this one here is creating a table. You see all the different table parameters. And then banner clients, banner tracks. So sometimes when you see stuff like a create table, the next call is usually to like add data to that. So that would be interesting to see if that was there. All right, so this case, there's a lot of SQL files. There's a lot of data to kind of look over. Each one of these is worth it, but let's focus on those exploits, those mediums here. So we're going to do this one first and see what this is. So if we do a search exploit, so if you have never used search exploit before, it is the command line version of exploitdb. So I'm just looking up that EDB ID number, and that's going to pull up the one thing. I could have also just done Joomla 3.7.0, and that was based on two tools, telling us the version number. We could have just done Joomla, and that would have pulled up different things. Again, here's all the components and stuff like that. So these are, components that had vulnerabilities in it. And we could look to see if those components were on that list of components being found. Let's close. No, we'll leave that open because we're gonna open up the exploit in there. All right, so let's go back. All right, so again, that is that 42033, and with search exploit, we can copy that exploit by using a -m and the EDB ID number, which is that number at the end there. And so that's going to copy that to our local directory. We can open that up in code, our Visual Studio. Or not. I guess I can't do it command line. All right, so if we look at this, we see that there is a URL that's vulnerable. In this case, for the exploit, they specify localhost, which again would be the web server in our case, index.php, so that's calling the main PHP page, and then it's called an option com fields. So that's again probably a default plugin that's installed. It's an option. And we see the view is fields, the layout equals module, and then list is an array of full ordering, and then update XML %27. So the exploit here is just telling us to use that in SQL Map with a risk level of 3, level 5, random agent, DBS, and then specifying the -p is the parameter. So what we're saying for SQL Map to focus in on is this parameter, not like layout, not view, not anything else, not option. So that's lowering the amount of time that you spend basically on SQL Map doing this. So what I'll do here then is, so this will take a while, but I'll show you the command basically to kick this off and a little bit of the process. So we're gonna make dir SQL temp. And the reason I'm making a directory is I want to save the output of SQL Map into this directory and not into the default SQL Map directory. So we can, we can almost copy this whole line here, and then we're gonna edit it on the command line. Ooh. That was not the same command prompt. There we go. Nope. Oh, all right. So we need to change some things. Whenever you're doing URLs, especially because they have parameters and the parameters are usually the and symbol, you need to put it in quotation marks. The reason is what Bash does is it sees the ampersand and then thinks that you're trying to background whatever that task was. So that's a good habit to kind of get into whenever you're using, especially URLs or anything like that in the command line tool, is to always use that ampersand. Oh, come on. So we're not going to do level 5. Level 5 will take too long. And another parameter, like I said, I'm going to do is that output directory because I want to save it locally. So random agents find DBS. So it's going to try to profile which backend database management it is, and then dash dash output dash dir, and then we are going to use that SQL temp. So :/SQL dash temp. So it's going to ask you, it's going to test things. Each web server ends up being a little bit different on what you need to answer for these. So in this case, it's saying I need to set my own cookie. So I'll play with this for sometimes, and I'll say, yeah, set a cookie. And then it says, okay, well, we detected MySQL. Do you want to skip all the other DBSs? Now, depending on my time frame, like if I'm doing a test and I'll say, maybe yes the first time, and then I'll come back to this again and I'll say no. Because just because it seems like it should be MySQL doesn't mean that it is. It could be MS SQL, it could be, Oracle or something else in the back end. So yes again. For the remaining test, you want to include all the MySQL extended. I'm going to just say no on this one. Again, it's a time thing. So what it should do is then it should do a quick couple tests here, and then it should basically figure this out. So we can kind of see right here that it found that it is definitely parameter injectable. Do you want to keep doing any other test? We're going to say no. Once you get something injectable, then you're kind of on that good path there. And so it shows you the full way that it tested it, and then it pulled out some information, some databases here. So if you never used MySQL to kind of not just dump the whole table, there's some important things here to look at. So these are available databases, and then we don't know what the tables inside of the databases are. So you have databases as the big part, right? And then tables are inside of databases, and then rows are inside of tables. And rows are consistent of multiple columns. Um, and so I'll show you here whenever I print out it's like an Excel sheet. If you look at Excel, think of the whole Excel sheet as a table, and whatever you put in the top column, whatever you put in the top row there is like your columns, and then the data kind of is underneath there. Each one of those are rows. Um, so we will ask SQL Map to focus in on database, that's the capital D, Joomla, and again, yes. All right, we didn't tell it to do anything. We want to see the dash dash tables. So we want to see what tables are inside that database. And so now it's going to retrieve that information, and each one of these are tables. We got, hash underscore underscore assets, hash underscore underscore associates, so on and so forth. And then it puts it in a nice little kind of graphic for you to kind of see this. There's the tables. So we want to focus in on is users. So the way you do that is capital dash T now, and then we're going to put this in single or double quotes again because it has characters that could affect the command line. So the hash and the underscores and stuff like that can be interpreted. It's mostly the hash. Um, that and then this and then you'll do a dash dash dump. So that's just going to dump the whole user's table now. So that's just focusing in on that one table instead of dumping everything, which might take a while. So here's where SQL Map will take its time, right? It's unable to retrieve column names. So when it did its query, it was not basically saying, hey, what the columns are. So what you need to do in this case is brute force the column names in order to get the rows. And this is where it's going to take that time. So if you do this and then you do a default, we want to put like as many threads as you can. So it's going to pull out some of these ID, name, username, things like that. Email. So it's taking that list and then it's trying to punch through those and say, hey, does this column exist? Does that column exist? Does this column exist? And if it gets a yes, hey, how's it going, Chen? Then that's when it's saying, okay, I know this column exists. And then what it'll be able to do is do the select statement correctly. It'll be select all from row 1 where ID, name, username, email, and whatever else it pulls through. So again, this takes a while. I've already done this. I'm going to kind of speed this up and show you the results of that. And we can still let that in the background. So we want the SQL map dump. So if you do the output directory again in your working directory, what it'll do is it'll output the IP address. It saves everything into an IP address directory. And then we can see there are multiple files. So we have a target.txt, which is what you targeted. And if we look at that, you'll see the options that you used and things like that. So again, you can see here, I did use a RIS3. I upped my threads and I put the output directory. So this, gives you the exact command that you ran. So this would be good, on if you're to on your pen test report write, steps to reproduce this. That would be the step that I would tell them how to reproduce this. Basically, is run this command, and if you're able to dump database, then that's bad. The session SQLite is the actual SQLite database that it kind of generates while doing this stuff. Then you got a log. I forget what's in the log. Oh yeah, just the actual parameter. So again, this would be a good thing to kind of include exact way to test this. Some information where you're able to pull what databases and then the actual table that you dump. So in this case here, what we can see is foreshadowing here. If you also go into your CD dump, this SQL map will put it into, there you go, the CSV file. So this should be just the same thing. So you see the columns, ID, email, name, parameters, username, password, and then you see the actual data that was inside there. So awesome, right? Like we have something. So we got a username and a hash. If you again do, I think it's hash ID. There it is. So hash ID will help you identify what hash this is. So it's just going to take in that information. So it's going to take in the hash. Again, we'll probably, because it has dollar signs and things like that, we're going to put this in. That did not like that for whatever reason. Let's try doing it just hash ID, and then maybe we can put it in. Again, the dollar signs kind of mess things up, so that's usually why you don't want to just put that in the command line there. Oh, come on. There we go. All right, so it identifies it as Blowfish, Walton Labs Burning Board 4.x, yeah, and bcrypt. I could tell you that Blowfish and bcrypt are one of the harder ones to crack, and the reason for that is they're time-intensive hashes. They're made to not be able to be brute forced easily. So the more time that you spend on it, the longer that it takes. And what I was trying to find was a good way to explain this better. Um, but basically, it has a cost, right? And that cost is determined right here by the system level. So the admin can decide the timing of the password search attack. Is determined by the number of iterations or cost, where cost can be between 2 and 31. And then the salt is a 16 byte random thing, and then the password is then used in the output of bcrypt is 24 bytes. So what this is saying is that it has a cost to it, or how much resources or cycles that it needs to take to do this, and then it has a salt, and then it takes that password and figures that out. And this one here, I want to say, if I remember correctly, is 10. So the 2y identifies bcrypt, and then I want to say the 10 identifies the cost, if I remember correctly. So again, that's pretty costly. That would take quite a bit of time. What we want to do here, though, is extract that and put that into John. Let me get back into my directory here. We do have, where is it at? All right, so we got Jonah and this here. Let's clear this and get back to a good directory. All right, so what you want to do then is, in order to put that into a file that John can understand, it needs to be a username, colon, and then the hash. So in that case there, I put it in CrackMe. And then for John, we would do dash, let's do dash H, show all the information first. You can then do dash dash pot, CrackMe. That's just going to put the John pot file in the local directory instead of in the John directory. Sometimes that's, I like to keep my files in the same directory where I'm working at. Then we can do dash dash word list. Again, we could do user share word list. Now again, if this password's not in your word list, you're not going to crack it. You'd have to use yeah, rules and stuff like that to manipulate your standard word list to find that password basically. So password cracking, what it is basically taking whatever's in that list and then doing that function, which is that bcrypt function. And again, this is why bcrypt takes so much time, is because it has that cost. So it has to do the salt and the password 10 times, and then that's the result. And so if that goes up to 31, that could take a way long time. So rock you, and then we need to put the hash, the file, so that's gonna be crackme.exe. So did I do? I need to put equals. I need to put equals on word list. That's gonna run for a little bit. Eventually, it will crack the password. And let me open up a new terminal. So what I'm doing here is basically just catting my pot file from before. So you see the hash here, and then it does a colon, and then whatever the password is. So now we have a password, and based on the output from SQL map and stuff like that, we have a username. We have Jonah. Let me find that here. No, we have it from when we put it in this file here too. Right here. Jonah. So we have two pieces of information. We have a username and a password. And so we have only, one avenue right now that we know of, and that's the actual blog, right? So let me close these. All right, so we have a username and a password, right? So we have Jonah. Oops. And we have the password that gets cracked. All right, so we're logged in now. Like, that's cool. But this just looks like the main page. Like there's nothing different about this. Um, so we need to kind of go back to what we had before, what we were seeing before on some of these, files that were left over, or identify a directory. So we saw, let's go look at Joomla Scan. So we saw an installation, we saw an admin. So let's look at administrator, because that's kind of what we're looking for. Some kind of access here. All right, so we're back at a login page. So we'll try the same thing. Excellent. So that worked. So this would be another finding. So that's a password reuse. So yeah, the user is basically reusing an administrative password on the regular blog site. Then the another finding would be that SQL injection. So using outdated or vulnerable modules within a web application would be a finding that I would write up, and then highlight how we got SQL Map to basically do how we used the CMS Map to find it, and then that it was outdated and was able to exploit it basically. All right, clear terminal here. All right, so we got a clear panel. We have the gambit. We can do stuff. We can install extensions. We can do news article, things like that. So playing with this, first thing I noticed is that we're running PHP. So um, if there's a way that I can put PHP code in here, that would be great. So we see content. This looks like it's a real text editor. We could try PHP here, and then just echo. Ooh. So this is just gonna literally print out who am I, not actually executed on the system. Let's just title this test page, save it. Okay, and we can see that this is encoding. It's published. Um, so that didn't really get us anything. Again, what we're looking for is some kind of code execution, right? So if we go back to this page, um, so if it worked, all we would see is just the who am I, because it would read the PHP and do something for that. Hey, thanks for the follow there, Cypher. Nope, wrong thing. Let's look at this and see if anything comes up. We're there. That's that page. So it didn't really save. It's under uncategorized. Let's see if we can find it. Again, we want to see what if we have the ability to execute PHP here. So this is uncategorized. There's our test page, and we see nope, it just printed out exactly what we wrote. So this is not executing PHP. It's just taking whatever we put in there and putting it there. So this is not going to help us here. So we can close that. Let's see if we find some other stuff. We see some categories, fields. Um, there's users, so we could look to see if there's any other users on this system. We could add another user. That's not really going to get us anything. Again, we want to get some kind of code execution. We could mass email all the users. You could do maybe a fish if you wanted to. That's not the way on this box, but that's a possibility. Again, that would depend on your scope too. So there's content there. Looks like it's just articles, categories. How about components? You see some banners, things like this. So a banner is another way maybe if it's allowing me to put some code in here, we could try that. It looks like it's a image type or custom. This might not really help me. We could try like a PHP image, see if that worked, but this doesn't look like it's going to do it. So we move on to extensions, and we have templates is usually a good one. So that usually is how the page is set up and stuff like that. There's that protostar. If you remember back from when we were scanning, um, it had mentioned that protostar. Let me see here. So website template protostar. Let's see if that maybe has something in there. That doesn't look like it's everything. We're looking for the files on there. There's the templates. I was clicking styles. So these are different templates installed here. We got this BZ3 and then Protostar. So that's the one that the website's using. All right, that's what we're looking for. So these, you can see that these are files, right? And these files, we know that these are being used based on the scans and stuff like that. Here's the PHP code. So this is directly executing PHP. We know that this is reading that. We can see where it's getting all the information, things like this. So this is a great find, right? Um, so what do we do here, right? Like that's we have remote code execution. Um, so we want to get something running on this. It's going to take this whatever PHP in here, and it's going to execute this on the server. So we could do a reverse shell. So let's do that. Let's look up a PHP reverse shell. And usually Pentest Monkey is another good one. If you did not know, let me show you guys real quick on this one too. In the standard Kali installation is opt share. Is it no user share? And then web shells. So here's some standard web shells if you're looking for some. So there's one there. We could look at that PHP reverse shell. All right. So if we look at this, how about that? It is Pentest Monkey's reverse shell. So this is going to be the same one we're going to find anyways. We'll just copy this and we'll replace that in that file. If it lets me. All right, we can open up in Co. Open file. We're going to do user share. Yeah, that's the thing. Like most of the time, it's hard to know like what's included in Kali because there's so much stuff. So again, it's getting used to what's in there and knowing your tools. I mean, that's really kind of what it boils down to, is just looking for something and then be like, oh, it's there. Okay, cool. Now I know. All right, so I'm copying this now. All right, and we're gonna replace everything in here. So I just copied it, pasted it. You can see that everything's in here. All right, so you need to read your shell before you use it. Anytime you're gonna download something off the internet, just don't run it. Have a basic understanding of what it's doing, right? So we're setting an IP, we're setting a port. There's there's a shell. This is doing bin sh. You know, depending if I knew that this system had bash, I would do bin bash. If this is Windows, then you would need to do something different. So yeah, you'd have to change the shell depending on what what's going on. And then we can see that here, this is very good and commented. This is telling you stuff if this function exists, the fork command, it's going to fork off and then basically, spawn a process to do this stuff. It's going to set up some stream blocking, which is basically handling pipes and data. And then, there's a sock, which is called a socket. So basically while this is running, just pump out data. If there's any errors in that, like the shell connection gets terminated or our process gets terminated, then print out that, and then wait for a command. So that it's going to take that command, it's going to put it into the pipes here, and then use a sock, and that's going to be put into an array that's going to be read into A. Number of change sockets, yada yada, standard in, standard out, F close, which means file close, and then proc close, which is process close. Nothing super malicious looking here. It's not like spawning off some other process. Definitely not looking like that it's going to spawn off to some other IP address or anything like that. It's opening up pipes. It's taking standard in, standard out, and standard error, putting those in those pipes, and then just taking input and executing it on the system using bin sh. So good stuff, right? All right, so we need to change some things. We need to change this to our IP address. So let's clear that. Let's ifconfig ton 0. That's going to be us. I'm going to copy that. All right, so if you are new, which I saw that some of you guys joined me tonight, I like to catch my shells with Metasploit. It is allowed on the test. I did look it up on the exams and stuff like that. You can catch shells with Metasploit using multi-handler. Um, it is your choice to upgrade those shells to Meterpreter one time. So that's it. So I like to catch my shells with Metasploit because they are gives you the ability to kind of kill that process and come back to it without having to lose your shell and respun up like netcat or anything like that. So we're going to do an msdb. We're going to do a run. So that's going to start up Metasploit. Also start up the database if it wasn't started. It's just good to get in the habit of it. You want the database so that you can search and find things quicker. All right. So what we are going to use exploit multi-handler. So this is a generic handler for all the payloads that um, Metasploit supports. And so in this case, what we're doing is we're going to basically catch a PHP payload, but we need to see what we have for um, available, right? So we're going to search PHP, and then we're going to do a type, and it's going to be a payload. So that's going to give you the available payloads that match PHP. In our case, we're just doing a reverse payload, so that's going to be this one here. We're going to set payload. set it to that. Then we'll show our options. So all we need is an L host and an L port. Again, those are just the generic options. If you show advanced, there are some advanced options. Um, you can have scripts run whenever it comes back in. You could also have it threaded as a new thread. This says it's experimental. Yeah, so some things like if you really wanted to go ahead and have it run some kind of script as soon as it gets a session back, that maybe on a multiple pen test or something like that would be happening. The one option I like to turn off is exit on session. So if I need to execute a shell again, I can keep catching that if I need to. So we're going to set the exit on session to false. So basically what happens right now currently is if when it's set to true, if one shell comes back, it'll kill the handler, and you'll never you can't catch a shell anymore. I'm gonna set lhost to ton 0, and then set lport. The lport's going to be based on that. There we go. So just lport 1234. Okay, so everything should be good, and we're going to do an exploit-j. So that's going to put the handler in the background, waiting for that job now. And so if we clear this and we do a jobs-v, we'll see that the exploit multi-handler is there with the payload of PHP reversed, and that we're just waiting and listening. All right. So this is good to go. We're ready to catch the shell now. So we're going to go ahead. Everything is good. We're going to save this, and we're going to save that now. And if we refresh this page, nothing happens, which is interesting, right? But if we go back to our Metasploit, we see that we have command shell. So what happened is that we caught that shell. It's basically executing that code and now waiting on us to do stuff based on the input. And when we do sessions, we can see that we got Linux Daily Bugle, the version and things like that. And so we have a shell now. So again, this is where you can split off. So you're allowed to have a shell, but once you upgrade to Meterpreter, that's your one time for Metasploit. So, word of caution there. Use Meterpreter if you feel like you need to. I like using Meterpreter, but we can show how you basically could use the shell tonight. So we're gonna go sessions dash I and then 1. That's gonna go interactive with that session. And it's basically gonna give us a shell. So we have a shell. Basically, you see a prompt there. We can do things, and what we need to do is figure out who are we. So who am I? We see that we are Apache. Can we clear this? Nope, because we don't have a terminal. So we can upgrade our terminal. We could do the Python thing. We can try bin bash. That didn't work. We didn't really get anywhere past that. So the Python TTY terminal will help you get more of a. It wouldn't work in this case for Metasploit because again Metasploit's handling that session. So like we couldn't do the echo dash whatever. That's where you need to do the netcat. But this is fine. We can work with this, right? We need to escalate our privileges. We need to figure out a way to get higher levels on this, higher privilege. So let's split this up. Let's split up this window. So this is going to be our shell, the shell on the box, and this is going to be our host here. So one of the great tools that I like to look at and use for privilege escalation is linps and winps. So privilege. I have put this in my opt directory. So this is opt privilege escalation awesome script suite. If you've never seen this before, if you type in GitHub and linps, it is this one right here, the first one that comes up. That's linps. If you just go back out to the main directory, you got linps and winps. And so this is multiple types of local privilege escalation checks that it can run. And so this is a really good tool to kind of use. All right. So then linps. So I like to cd in that directory here and just make sure I have that so that I can see what I'm trying to get. And I also need to start the Python server there because I need to serve this back over. So again, with our regular command shell, we don't have the ability just to upload or anything like that. If we use Meterpreter, we could upload that file, wherever we wanted to. So we'll do a Python 3 -m http -server. So this is again the new Python 3 approved method of doing this. And you should get in the habit of this instead of using Python 2. So this is going to generate the Python server on my system and wait for, basically serve files. So we're going to put this in dev shm. So we're cd in there. We working directory. We're in there. And we're going to use wget and http://1011. What were we? 11.0-14:8000. And then /linps.sh. That's going to download the file. You see that it pulled it from here. So we're good here. We can close this now. We'll exit that out so that we can just get mostly the big terminal again. And so now if we do an ls, we see linps is there. And so we'll need to make this executable. So chmod +x, and that's going to be linps. And now we have linps executable. So if we do an ls-al, we see that it is executable. It is owned by Apache. And so we'll run this linps.sh. Another cool thing that I'm going to show you tonight is that if you wanted to save this output, you can do a pipe t, T-E-E, and then output.text. So what this is going to do is going to run the command, and it's going to show it to you, but it's also going to save that output to this output.text. All right, so linps is going over a bunch of information. It's looking at software, it's looking at users, looking at cron jobs, looking at SIDs and GUIDs and possible files. Now it's looking at interesting files. There's our SIDs and GUIDs and any profile stuff. Ooh, that's interesting. So whenever you see a lot of this type of stuff or password, there's an awesome password right there. These are all saved in the text files, it looks like, of the web directory and stuff like that. So we'll look at those here in just a minute. All right, while it's waiting on that, let's just see if we can find anything that seems super interesting right away. So we can scroll all the way up to the top. And so again, linps has a lot of information, a lot of things coming out of it. So it did highlight that the Linux version is a little bit out of date, 3.10.0, so that might be something to kind of look to see if there's a kernel exploit. We do see a sudo version. If you remember recently in the news, there was a sudo privilege escalation. So something maybe we would look at, even though it didn't highlight it there. It's just something to look at. Some other things to look at, we see there's a zero history size, so we know that none of the users' histories are being saved. If they are, they're saved to dov null, which means that they're not saved. There is no SE Linux, so that's good. In our case, this would be almost a finding. I would, recommend that they enable SE Linux here. Useful software that's available on the system. So we can see that they have Nmap, Netcat, wget, curl, ping, make, base64, Python 2, Python 2.7, Perl, PHP, and sudo. So it's some good information. There is a sudo bypass with Nmap that I know for a fact. If we look at GTFO bins, and we might try that one just to see if it works. So GTFO bins, these are binaries that are installed on the system by default. And what happens is they have unintended functions. And LOL bins is Windows. So for Nmap, we see here that there are multiple different ways to use this to kind of get a shell or break out of restricted environments, non-interactive shell. You can download files, file write, file read, sudo. So like we would try this sudo and see if that happens. We'll try that in a minute here. Let's see what else we got. So we got root, run a bunch of processes. There's some cron jobs, postfix, MySQL, Apache. Oops. There we go. Binary processes. We see all these are owned by root, some cron jobs. So again, these are things that definitely you want to look at cron jobs, and maybe if they have a backup or anything like that. We don't see anything majorly standing out. Services, so we can search for outdated services, which don't look like they have many. And then some network information, IP tables, my user, so we can see that we're Apache. We don't have any PHP keys. Sudo L-L without passwords not working. Um, super users, and then there's users with console. So again, there's another user on the system, so it's a good thing to take note of that. Maybe we need to get to that user. J Jameson, all users and groups. So now we're looking at everybody. UIDs are user IDs, so 0 is usually root, and then additional users that are actually added onto the system are start at 1,000 and go above. So we can see that Jameson was added to that system. No users are logged in right now. That might help um, if there was multiple users logged on. We could do like a Mimi Penguins and stuff like that if we have the ability to, and see if we can pull passwords out of memory. That'd be an interesting box to see, and I might talk to Dark about that and see if we can get that going. Is a user logged in and do like a Mimi Penguins, because everyone knows Mimi Cats, but I don't think many people have used Mimi Penguins. I'd jot that one down and talk to him about that. So we see some, it's looking for Postgres information. Um, some unexpected auth. So, PAMD is used for privilege access management. Daemon for SSH. So we can see here that it's just asking for additional things. No NFS exports. No Kimball login or Logstash, Elasticsearch, Vault, AD creds, or anything like that. So here's your suiteds. So these are super user ID binaries. So these are binaries that have the potential. They're running as root or whatever, and so you could possibly use these. So these would look up for GTFO bins. Same thing with SQID. So super group ID binaries. Uh, some mail applications. There's the HTTPD config. So I mean, there's a lot to go through here. A lot of web files, things like that. We'll notice so far LinPiece has not highlighted anything red and yellow. Here's a good one. searching passwords for PHP config. So that's good. I'm gonna copy that one down. So we do have another password that we can try, and we do have a user. So we see some backup files there. Some more client ID. So these, it's searching for these strings in these files to kind of highlight and make sure that you have an idea on things. If there's anything there. We do see another password. This looks kind of the similar of what we had before, but this is for that vendor IRC Maxwell password lib PHP. So, and it seems like it's just hanging there. It's not doing anything. So we'll cancel NPs. I think that's a pretty good session there. So again, because we're using Metasploit, you can see here I did a Control C, and instead of trying to kill the process, what it's trying to do is abort that session, and that's fine. It actually closed it. That's not fine. It should have saved it. I could have said no, I guess. That's alright. We can re-execute the. We can re-execute that and just get the command shell back. So now we have a new command shell, and that's the great thing of having Metasploit there, sitting as a listener, is that we could do that. All right. So we have a password for Jameson. So we can't log back into the app. We changed this now. So we could see if that password works for other services. So we could do an SSH Jameson at. Yes, and then we'll paste in that password that we found in the linpiece, and that logged us in. So now we're on there. So we're logged into the system. We're Jay Jameson, and we can see if we can get to anything. Like, okay, so we see that the user text is here. That's great. Can we read that? We should be able to read that. Yep. So it looks like we'll be able to read that based on the permissions. How about can we list out root? No, permission denied. All right, so we're not fully, we don't have escalated privileges or anything like that. So it's kind of the same situation here. Like we'd almost run the linps again to see what we would get out of this one this time, and see if there's any differences in that. So that is still in our dev shm linps, and we're gonna tee that off, and we'll call this one Jameson. And you could try other things too. Like you could look, like go back to that last one and try those GTFO bands. We could try the Nmap thing. While that's running, actually, let's see. Let's see if we can open up another terminal and see if we can get that going. Uh-oh. Let me copy it again. Apparently I did not copy it right. So we can see that this highlighted something very important here, and we'll go look at that here in just a second. There it is. I misspelled it. All right, well, it's still going. It actually finished up. That was interesting that it finished up this time compared to the last time it did not. Let's try that Nmap GTFO bin since we saw that before. So based on this here, we want to do runs in a privileged context. It may be used to access a file system, escalate, or maintain access privilege. So we're just gonna copy this. Helps if I actually just copy. Okay, and we'll run that in here and see if we can get anywhere with that. So it's asking for the sudo password. We do know James's password. It is that you whatever, so we could try that. In the case that you did not use the password or know the password, yeah, you would be stuck in this case. So let's just see if this works out for us. He might be part of the sudo errors. We should have done a sudo -l and see if he was, but we did not. All right, so sorry, user James is not allowed to execute that. So he is not able to do that. We could do sudo -l. So we can see that Jameson is allowed to use user bin yum all no password. And if we look back at WinPs2, it looked like it was highlighting something like that. Right there. So usually when it highlights a red text with the yellow background, that's a high possibility of getting privilege escalation. So we got two hits basically on this now that we should use that yum. So let's go back to our GTFO bins and see how to use yum. So I just changed it to yum up there if you didn't catch that. All right, so let's see here. Uh, it so we can do a sudo. That's kind of what we want to do. So runs a command using a specially crafted RPM package. We don't have any RPM packages. Spawn an interactive root shell by loading a custom plugin. So let's try this one. So we're just going to copy this. So, all right, let's explain what's going on, right? We're creating a variable tf and we're running a command. We're running a make temp a -d. I'd have to look up what make temp does, but I'm guessing it makes some kind of temporary thing there. Then it's going to cat that it's going to cat something into tf. That's the variable, the $tf /x, and it's going to wait to end of file. So it's catting the rest of this until it reads EOF. All right, so it is catting mail plugins one plugin path tf, and then plugin config is tf into file. And then we're doing another cat, so we're putting in that tf variable, we're putting a y config, and this is also going to go to end of file, and it's going to put main in the enabled one. So this is some kind of configuration, and it's being enabled. And then we're doing a y.py. So this is a Python file. So bet you can guess what this is going to do here. So it's going to import OS, it's going to import yum, and from yum plugins, it's going to import plugin exit type core type interactive. Requires an API version of 2.1, and then define an int hook conduit, and then it's going to do an OS execute CL or command line bin bash, and then end of file. So what this is basically doing is it's creating a temporary file x, it's creating a temporary file y.config, and a temporary file y.py, and it's setting up this package to basically get installed, right? So for yum, you have to have a, a package, and then you have to have a config for that package, and that config is executing some kind of script. So sudo yctfx, so it's calling this first, and then enabling the plugin there. And then because that is called yconf and then ypy, it's executing whatever this Python script is. And so that's going to be executing as root. All right, so we're just going to paste this right on the command line. It's going to tell us, are you sure you want to do that? And we're just going to blindly say yes. All right, we do get a command prompt. We did notice that it changed. It does not say James anymore, so that is a good indication that something happened. So if we do a who am I, we are now root. So we can ls root. All right, and root.config's there. So that's rooting the box. Let's see if we accomplished all of our objectives. So we figured out that we cracked Jonah's password. I went over that quickly. Let's see if that ever did finish cracking. So SQL map finished dumping eventually, like I said. Yep, there it is. So it finished cracking too. We can see that there. Oh, and that new tool finished up too. So we can see here. Let's see if it put out some stuff here that we can look at. Yes, it did. Yeah, let's look at that real quick because I kind of want to have an idea what this is about. So let's close. Now we'll keep that up and we'll compare. All right. So we're in the file directory. We have a exploit, loot, proof, and scans, right? So let's just do an lsalr. Let's see what ends in every one of these files. So in exploit, there's nothing. In loot, there is nothing. Scans, there's some findings, Nmap, quick, and then SMB looks like that. So let's go to scans and see what we got there. Underscore findings. Let's look at that first. Okay, so it's just kind of a text output here. We do see, it's giving you the options here on the commands that you could do brute forcing. Easy copy paste you could do there. So you got Medusa, Hydra, Ncrack. You can use Nmap to automate some banner grabbing. They found some HTTP services, so some other things there. So that's cool. That kind of gives you a little bit of what commands to run. Even GoBuster commands are there, and you can specify exactly what GoBuster. That's cool. Let's see what else we got. Cat. Let's look at the Nmap and see what that came out of. Yep. So it's it's the exact same Nmap that we would have got from above here. Pulled some directories, things like that. So that's good. This is telling you the exact nmap command that it's running. So again, this is good for if you're wanting to create a proof of concept or how you got this information. This is exact nmap command. Does this seem helpful to everyone on the stream, or hopefully it seems helpful? So let's see, it's in the SNMP, and then we'll cat this. Okay, nothing came out of that system processes. All right, so that's cool. Yeah, cool, awesome. So that was the box. That's how you get root.